Good day, this is Jeff Rouse checking in from Fairmont City Hall. We just got done shooting a new episode of Martin County on TV, and look who I ran into. Mayor Deb, it's nice to see you. How you been?
I have been good. How about you?
Good. We just got done shooting another episode, like I was saying, of Martin County on TV.
It's very, very exciting, Jeff, and I look forward to seeing more episodes.
Okay. This week, our guest host is Lenny Tvedten. Of course, you know Lenny very well.
Very well.
And we're going to be talking about some stories that have been done years ago and another interview. So would you like to see it right now?
I would love to see it.
Let's go to that. Joining me today as my guest host is Lenny. Lenny, welcome aboard. Nice seeing you.
Thank you. Good to see you.
So I know you, of course, and for many years, and know what you do, and many of our audience members, I'm sure, do too. But share with those few that might not know what you do.
Yeah, I'm the director of the Martin County Historical Society here in Fairmont, Minnesota. I've been doing that for about 17 years now. And I found it to be both very interesting, and I've learned a lot. It's just a lot of fun.
Great. You have done an incredible job, you and your group.
Oh, thank you.
I will say, I think it's one of the finest museums I've seen in towns our size or most any size.
Well, I'll agree with that. But, you know.
It's awesome. It's very, very cool. So tell me about a few things that are happening there at the museum now.
A couple of new displays we have. One is an airplane display. There are 6 airplanes donated by Richard Johnson Sr. that's in the military room. They're hanging from the ceiling, and they're hanging in a way that you can see all sides, not just the bottom. And Woody Woodward, KSUM, just donated, approximately, I'm not going to say for sure, about 15, 20 historic radios that we
awesome.
just put on display down in the Carlson room by the KSUM transmitter that Woody donated probably about 5-6 years ago.
Very cool.
So it's a really nice display.
How long has the museum been there, Lenny?
The museum was organized in 1929. It's been in its current location since 1956.
Okay.
And the addition that houses the research library was built in 1995.
Wow. Lenny, we have a great show today, and we have some great segments I think the folks are going to really enjoy. The first one is a 1950s, and I watched part of this, very interesting, a 1950s movie. Tell us about that.
Okay, that movie is a documentary of Fairmont that was filmed in 1954, I believe. And John Larsen came across the movie in movie form, and I believe he had it remastered. And we now have it on video, or on DVD, I should say. It's a 1954 documentary of Fairmont, and it includes the scenes and the sights and the people of that era, and people that a lot of us will remember or will have heard of. It's very interesting.
Was it aired at that time?
I believe, to the best of my knowledge, it was, yes.
Wow.
Yeah. It was done, I think, specifically for the community, but it was documentaries that were done by this KSTP, Twin Cities radio or TV station.
Well, we certainly could talk about this for a long time, but instead, why don't we watch it?
Sounds good.
Let's take a look.
Welcome back to Hometown Focus. When we looked ahead the last segment, this time we're going to take a look back to 1954, actually. This was a film that was located by the Fairmont City Councilman Jim Smith, brought it down to the Martin County Historical Society. It was a promotional movie that was created for the city of Fairmont. Had a lot of interesting things as we take a look back this week with Len Tvedten in our Look Back segment.
This is Lenny Tvedten at the Martin County Historical Society. About 2 months ago, Jim Smith, city councilman, brought us a movie. Actually, it's in 2 segments, and they're each about 26 minutes long. It appears that it was a promotional movie made of Fairmont, Minnesota, back in the early 1950s. It talks about Fairmont and its population being 8,500 people, its 5 suburbs, that it was an economically sound area. They make reference to the fact that it was a center for vacationists, is the word that was used, by car, bus, and railroad. After we received the movie, I contacted John Larsen, and he put it on video. And John, I'd like to ask you now, just give a little background on what you did regarding that.
Well, I just happened to stop down to the museum, I guess, just a day or so after Jim Smith had brought the tape in, and took it home and ran it through the machine, and was just very delighted to find that this is a documentary of the city of Fairmont made about 1954. And the person that did the documentary, his name was Robert M. Carson. And there's not much known about Robert M. Carson, but I did go on the internet and find some information on him. And he had done some other documentaries of different towns, but the only two that were known that he had done were Beatrice, Nebraska, and Syracuse, Nebraska. So I think we've got the third one here, and there probably were other ones, but when I did see the tape or the movie, I knew that it was something that we needed to get copied in a professional way, and I did take it to Sioux City, Iowa, and had the tape digitally copied, and I think it came out very well. It's a very clear picture and no flickering or anything like that. So I think Fairmont has a real treasure here. It's a view of Fairmont and a lot of different segments of Fairmont from 50 years ago. And I think the city is very lucky to have this.
Right, I'd agree with you, John. I think it's very, very interesting. It's interesting to look back at seeing some of the sites of Fairmont and comparing it to what they look like now, especially, I think, looking at the houses and the streets, there weren't a lot of trees. One of the interesting segments, or there's quite a few interesting segments, but one near the beginning shows the Amoco station right now. It was a standard station. It's seen from Bryan's Pharmacy.
The intersections of highways 15 and 16 at the edge of town have a constant flow of cars and trucks entering, leaving, or passing through Fairmont.
There's a segment showing the mayor and the city council, Mayor Cam Brown. I believe the other people there are James McNerney and Knut Peterson.
Fairmont operates under the mayor and council form of government. An alderman represents each of the city's various wards, in addition to an alderman at large, who is chosen at the biennial elections. The mayor appoints, subject to the approval of the council, committees on finance, library, and also various others. All of these men work together, along with the citizens of Fairmont, to keep our town a clean and well-managed city.
There's a segment on the police chief, George Cavers. Shows him kind of in action, actually, right at the police station, receiving a phone call, and it refers to the radio-controlled cars. The policemen are at the shooting range.
An important part of the police department's activities is a visit to their pistol range. Every week they shoot here, and in addition attend other pistol matches throughout the state. In fact, our department even has a specially trained match team. This team is made up of 4 men who get the highest score in these practice matches here.
And John, what are some of the things that you saw in the movie that you thought were interesting?
Well, there were just there were so many different interesting aspects in there. Probably one of the neater ones I thought that I saw was it showed Lloyd Allsworth loading up his biplane with spray chemical, and he did a lot of spraying for the canning factory. And it shows the cameraman was out there, you know, taping with 16 millimeter movie, taping this, and it shows Lloyd taking off and then making several passes, you know, dumping chemical on the crops, and then the next picture shows this Robert M. Carson taping Lloyd Allsworth from another plane. In other words, Robert Carlson was in another plane looking down on Lloyd Allsworth spraying.
This is the way Fairmont has grown, little by little through the years, until now. We are all proud and respect our town.
There's shots of the train buffs. We had, you know, trains coming through Fairmont regularly back then, and there's quite an interesting shot of the train coming into the station.
Each year, visitors and prospective new settlers come to our town by car, bus, and railroad. Since the year 1878, when the railroad first came to Fairmont, it has enjoyed a steady and prosperous growth. In fact, every census for the past 30 years has shown about a 20% increase in population. The trains bring these visitors to our town of homes, schools, factories, business, and perhaps most important, churches. A town economically sound. Yes, Fairmont faces a bright future. Ample water, cheap and abundant power, and ever-growing industrial and agricultural fields all point the way to this.
Another interesting segment, there's a segment of probably about maybe 3 or 4 minutes of the Fairmont Martins baseball game. There's an actual baseball game where this guy was out on the field. And
Both young and old enjoy the many and varied opportunities for relaxation and fun. After the day's work is over, the people of our town come out to watch their team, the Fairmont Martins, play night ball in competition with other towns in the regional league. The Martins play a full schedule in the Western Minnesota League with night home games played at Martin Park. It's always fun to come out and have a hot dog, outguess the managers, boo the umpires, and root the home team through to another victory. And that's what the people of our town do. They work and work hard, but they also like to relax, and Fairmont offers an interesting and wide variety of recreational facilities to not only its citizens, but also to visitors.
And we haven't identified a lot of the Martin players, but that's kind of the interesting part of this whole find here is looking through these films again and sitting down with people that probably are still living now and having them identify themselves.
Right, I know that same clip, it shows a lot of people in the stands. You know, it has some fairly lengthy shots of people in the stands, and both on the field too. And I think a number of people, as John said, would still be living, and maybe your mother or father or somebody is out there too. One clip that I saw that was interesting too, it showed Dick Shear, the municipal band, and he was directing it, 35 adults and 40 students. And they had mentioned it had been in existence for about 3 years at that time. Another one showed the bus depot. That's where the present municipal liquor store is, and it shows a bus pulling out of the bus depot. And they make reference to the modern Fairmont Community Hospital that employed 60 people, compared to today, what, about 600 people?
Yes.
So, quite a few changes over the years. One that I wasn't familiar with at all was totally new to me, is the Blue Lanes Game Farm, and partridges were dressed and, as stated in the movie, sent to fine restaurants. So I thought that was kind of interesting regarding that. John, any others you can think of?
Well, just one of the other interesting ones was the park department trimming trees. They had their truck with a very rickety ladder on it, and one of the workers climbed up with a regular carpenter's saw and was sawing branches off the trees, you know, down the sides of the streets, and grabbing the branch and dropping it over the side. Mm-hmm. And another one showed him spraying the ditches.
2,4-D?
With 2,4-D, yeah. The worker was there spraying, and he didn't have any mask on, and he was just spraying this stuff all over the place. So things have changed.
Things have changed,
yeah.
No doubt. They made reference to several of the banks in town at that time. They referred to Fairmont National Bank, and they indicated at that time it was the county's largest bank, employing 19 people. Some of the people that were shown there, John Teasling, our own Muriel Malliette, who works here at the museum, she's shown in that shot. It also shows the Fairmont Building and Loan Association. Martin Schomber is meeting with Mr. and Mrs. Ed Hyde. They're apparently considering purchasing a house. And then they leave the building and they go out and drive through town and pull up to one of the houses, apparently one that they might be considering.
Along with the rapid growth that has come, the past years have seen intensified efforts to safeguard the savings of the association's members. In 1952, 32% of the earnings were allocated to reserves. There are 3,500 savers and stockholders who are proud members of the association.
Talks about railway motors, and one thing I guess I wasn't aware of was the fact that at one time Duluth had made an offer to move railway motors to that city, but of course they didn't go.
Products have increased too, and include now 17 different models of motor cars. Then models of push cars and 30 separate units of work equipment. These products are sold to practically every railroad in the United States and Canada, in addition to being exported to Mexico, Central and South America, Africa, Asia, and to parts of Europe. At present, the company employs around 400 people. It maintains district offices in 4 other cities, with the central office, of course, in our town.
Again, I think this is a real, a wonderful find, a real gem for the city of Fairmont. And if you can maybe comment a little on, if this is going to be something that we can show here. I know a lot of people won't want to see this.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's a definite possibility. One thing I'll mention, we are going to have the video for sale here at the museum. If you're interested, you can call the museum and we'll put you down for a video. The cost is going to be $20 plus sales tax, so it'll be a total of $21.30. On the video will be the Our Town production. We'll also have the 1934 corn husking contest on it. The World War II soldiers marching down, I believe it was 1st Street. And there's also a milking contest that will be on there that's done in front of the Strand, which became the Lake Theater in downtown Fairmont. And I guess if there's enough interest, well, I would certainly consider a showing or maybe several showings here at the museum or some other venue, depending on what we can work out. But they will be for sale here at the museum, so if you're interested, give us a call. John, anything else?
I guess finding this makes one wonder how many other old movie films like this might be around laying in people's attics or closets. And I guess if if people do have those types of things, which I know personally, I started taking movies back in high school, and
Sure.
and I know a lot of people have movies. One individual, Ted and Opal Kittleson, and have just a wealth of family movies that they've taken. I mean, they've got all kinds of roles that we've been converting for them. I think if people have these historic movies, it might be something that the museum would be interested in taking a look at, because there could very well be some very historic shots around town here of people that people have taken over the years, and they don't have projectors. Most people don't have movie projectors anymore, but I know the museum has accepted a number of quite interesting movies. You have quite a good collection of the centennial movies. Blaine, but what was the fellow's name there?
Yeah.
A fellow from town here took a lot of movies. Blaine Gukeen, and has a lot of movies of the centennial parades of all the small towns around Fairmont.
Sure.
So. I guess if it's okay with you, if people have some of these and want to bring them in and see what's on them.
Sure, it'd be a good way to keep a record. And again, I'll mention, I think this is a real find, a real gem of local history. So if you're interested, please contact us, and we certainly appreciate the fact that Jim Smith from the City Council brought it down to the museum. This is Lenny Tvedten for Hometown Focus.
Next feature we're going to do is about the Ward's Orphanage. Lenny, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, the Ward's Orphanage was started by Albert Ward. He came to Martin County. He was a pioneer in Martin County. When he first came here, he was out of the service, and he was quite frail, sickly. And through his entrepreneurial skills, he managed to, I think he became a lawyer. He owned farms and businesses, and he in turn developed the Ward Orphanage, which eventually evolved into the Gilbert Hotel and was owned by the Gunthers until it was taken down a number of years ago.
Well, there was a story done, it looks like it was done by Focus on Fairmont in 1995, and it was hosted or done by Marie Brodt.
Okay, Marnie.
We know Marnie.
Everybody that lived in Fairmont knew Marnie.
Yes.
She was a real promoter of the community, and she had Fairmont and Martin County. It was in her best interest, and she always was positive about it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, let's take a look at that report right now.
An important piece of history in Fairmont is located on the east side of town. We're taking a look back in history 9 years ago to 1994 with reporter Marie Brodt in a piece she did for then Focus on Fairmont show, and at that time she focused on the history of the former Gilbert Hotel.
Hello, I'm Marie Brodt with a history brief on an 80-year-old Fairmont landmark. This is now owned by the Gunther family and called Fair Lakes Apartments, and the building was known for years as the Gilbert Hotel. However, it had its beginnings as an orphanage. We invite you to step back in time about 80 years. Visualize yourselves on the corner of Prairie and Blue Earth Avenue. Looking east, all the real estate from here to the village of Gukeen belonged to Mr. A.L. Ward. He was a character, yes, and a very successful and innovative early Fairmont businessman and a senator. As an old Sentinel newspaper state, Ward was a strong believer in the adage that the devil finds work for idle hands to do. In 1919, he opened a 4-story orphanage and arranged for orphans from New York slums to board the orphan trains of the times and to be brought here. Mr. Ward furnished the orphans with room and board and sent them to school in exchange for their labor. The boys worked in the fields, pulling mustard, hoeing potatoes, and doing other related farm tasks. The girls were maids and seamstresses in the homes of the affluent Fairmont citizens. Some people felt that Mr. Ward's effort was an occasion for criticism. But that 80-year-old gentleman said he was simply providing the young people with work and helping them to be useful citizens. A lawsuit and acquittal over the beating of a boy, plus mounting criticism, finally convinced Ward to give up the project. This probably was one of Mr. Ward's only endeavor that failed. Some of the orphans were adopted, others we are unable to account for. Over the years, over 40 children lived at the Ward's orphanage. The Ward home stood empty for many years, but finally in the early 1940s it was purchased by Mr. and Mrs. Harry Gilbert. They converted it into a beautiful hotel with 60 rooms, comfortable double beds, large airy windows covered by Venetian blinds, thick carpeting, and attractive color schemes made the rooms, according to a 1940s Sentinel article, the finest obtainable in this part of the country. Today this building is Fair Lakes Apartments. We spoke with owner Bob Gunther and asked how his involvement started.
Well, my dad bought it from Harry Gilbert when I was in high school.
Right.
And I ran it as a hotel for about 4 years. And then because of competition, we converted it into an apartment building. And that's what we have now, Fair Lakes Apartment Building.
Bob gave us a tour of the building and showed us the original fireplace.
Okay, this fireplace is probably the last thing that is recognizable from the original orphanage building. This was one of the 2 fireplaces that were in the building that went up 3 stories to heat the building when it was an orphanage. They had blocked it up when they made it a hotel, so it's not a functional fireplace, but this is the last thing really left. And when they converted it into a hotel, they had to support another floor as well as 2 wings on each side when they made it a hotel in 1941 approximately. And as you can see in the thickness of the walls here, they had kind of eye-shaped beams with dormitory-type rooms where the orphans stayed in. And converting it to a hotel, this is probably the only qualified nuclear fallout shelter in southern Minnesota because each floor is 14 inches thick of concrete and steel, and the hall walls are 14 inches thick, and the outside walls are 20-plus inches thick. So it's an awesome structure, but pretty hard to make anything out of it without spending a lot of energy and a lot of money.
Is that why when you first got it, you didn't tear it down and start over?
Well, that was one of the reasons, as well as the fact that there were a lot of people living here, and this was their homes, and we didn't want to destroy that either. And like all other businessmen, I just as soon have something pay for itself before I take it down. But now we have no plans for taking it down, and we hope someday to rehab it into apartments and to have this as a viable apartment building for residents here that make their homes here as well as other people.
And we were able to go upstairs, view the freshly painted hallways, and visit one of the apartments. This nicely decorated apartment consists of a living room, bedroom, bath, and kitchen. This building has witnessed much of Fairmont's history. It was built as an orphanage by one of Fairmont's pioneers, converted to a hotel in the 1940s, and it is now an apartment building, restaurant, and taxi dispatch site. This is Marie Brodt for Focus on Fairmont.
Well, that was a very interesting report.
Right.
If we came down to the museum, do you have any more information about the orphanage?
Well, we have our history files and picture files, and we have quite a bit of information on Albert Ward, and we have pictures of the Ward Orphanage or the Gilbert Hotel.
Okay.
And a lot of information on the evolution of the Ward Orphanage into what it became.
Very cool, very cool. Next segment we're going to look at is Out of the Past, and that's a series that you did for us at Our Story.
Okay.
And this one's with a veteran. His last name is pronounced
Kellander.
Kellander. Can you tell us a little bit about that interview?
Right, Gordon Kellander. We did an interview with him. He's a World War II veteran. He had a very interesting story to tell. And in addition to that, I just might mention too that we have DVDs of Martin County veterans. We've done a number of interviews with them.
Really?
Probably have about 50 of them on hand. So not only with Gordon's, but others. If anybody's interested, they can come down to the museum and pop them in and watch them individually. Plus, we show them during the summer months, one a month.
How long are most of these interviews?
They range from about 30 minutes to about 60 to 70 minutes.
Wow, that's very neat to have.
All Martin
for the
County
community.
veterans.
Very cool. Well, this is a report that you did in 2007. So let's take a look at that.
Welcome to Our Story from Out of the Past. Today I'm going to visit with Gordon Kellander. He's a Martin County native, is that right, Gordon? Mm-hmm. And he has some experiences in World War II that I think are really interesting, and he's going to tell us about some of those. First of all, you were in World War II. What branch of the service were you in?
Combat engineers.
Combat engineer. So you were building things then?
Yeah, sort of. We were fighting too, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where did you serve? I know you were overseas. Where are some of the locations that you were at?
I was on Attu, in Kiska, in Kwajalein, in the Philippines, and Okinawa.
Okay, Kwajalein. You showed me a picture of Kwajalein. Is that the Marshall Islands?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you showed me an airstrip there. It was really kind of a nice picture. What do you remember about that, or what can you tell us about that?
We built that airstrip out of live coral. We drug it out of the ocean. There was no blacktop available, and they needed a bomber strip from one end of the island to the other. So we built the whole thing. So my company and two other companies, A, B, and I was in A company. A, B, and C are the 50th Engineers.
Uh-huh.
We built that bomber strip all the way across that island. And we had no blacktop, so we had a drag line, drag live coral out of the ocean.
Really?
And we bladed it, packed it with rollers, and watered it over and over and over. And it got as hard as blacktop. Where they brought in a whole pile of B-24 bombers to bomb Truk, which was Japan's Pearl Harbor.
Sure.
200-300 miles southwest of there. And the airstrip is still there, as far as I know.
And you were telling me how long that airstrip is?
6,700 feet.
So it's over a mile long.
It's over a mile long, from one side of the island to the other.
Okay.
And we had B-24s that tell you they could pack them on that island.
Uh-huh.
There were that many of those big bombers that took off of that airstrip.
Now, you mentioned, too, you had some pretty interesting experiences, especially regarding one person that's probably indebted to you for saving his life, and he lives in this area.
Yeah.
Tell us about that experience.
Yeah, his name is Gaylord Tapp. He lives northeast of Albert Lee.
Mm-hmm.
And we got bombed one night on Leyte in the Philippines.
Mm-hmm.
And so much gravel and stuff went in the air that he jumped in a foxhole, and it almost buried him alive. He couldn't even move. And I was in a foxhole, and two guys jumped on top of me, including Harold Johnson from Fairmont here, who used to run the garage,
Uh-huh.
and another fella from Cunningham from Tennessee. So they kind of protected me, but I almost got buried anyway. Because it was like a truck backed up and dumped a load of gravel on your head. There was that much gravel coming down.
Sure.
The bomb went off right across the road. They wiped out a little radar unit. We had just talked to the guys a few minutes before, walked across the road, and this airplane flew over with lights all over the top of it, all lit up. So nobody paid attention to it. Pretty soon it started bombing us. And that's how we got involved in it. So anyway, Harold Johnson and I and another fella, we had to dig Gaylord Tapp out with our helmets. That's all we had.
Boy, that must have...
On our hands and knees, and dug gravel out around him so he could finally move.
You're still being shot at and fired at, too?
Well, there was explosions going on all over the place because they bombed an ammunition dump a block from us. And there was a truckload of gasoline barrels that were exploding right in front of Gaylord Tapp. And it was pretty hot. He said, "Don't leave me, don't leave me."
Is that how you knew he was there? He hollered out?
He hollered at us, yeah. He couldn't get out of the foxhole. And if he even tried to move, he felt it getting tighter on him all the time. The gravel just kept sinking. So anyway, we got him dug out and we pulled. Partner pulled his arms out of him. He kept hollering, "Don't, you pull my arms out. Dig some more, dig some more." They were down in our stomachs digging more gravel around his legs to get him out.
Gee,
and I never see him today at a reunion. He doesn't say, "Well, here I am again because of you guys."
Have you seen him sometimes, though, since that?
Oh, sure. I see him partner every year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, interesting. Well, you must have had some more experiences. What are some others that you can think of that are...
Oh, a lot of things. I was in 5 campaigns. There was always something going on. I don't know. See, the first one I got shot at by some snipers up in Attu. One time nobody else would take a bulldozer down the mountain, so they wanted me to do it, so I had to do it. I had to go down backwards because the only way I could hold the thing, that was a D6, and it had back pressure on the blade. You could push the blade into the ground. You couldn't do it.
So you wouldn't turn over, you mean?
Yeah, and I had a pile, half the mountain came with me. It was tundra and stuff up the side of the mountain, you know. And I got down the bottom, I hollered, and there was a tent down below me, and I couldn't stop. I was sliding on mud all the way. And there were some guys in the tent, and they hurried up and got out of the way, and I went right through the tent. I had to run over them. They were in bed. Yeah,
but they got out of the way, though.
They got out of the way, thank goodness. I hollered like mad. They heard something, they ran out. Oh, crazy stuff.
Did you happen to see any of the generals, like MacArthur or any of those people over there?
I was on the beach on Lady when MacArthur came ashore.
What was that like?
Well, I was on a D8 dozer, and I just came around the corner and kicked the clutch out, and it was sitting there idling. I looked out in the water at the boat. Is that dugout Doug coming? I thought to myself. That's what they called him over there. And sure enough, it was MacArthur with a guy on each elbow helping him ashore. And he barely got to shore, and a guy, a beach master from the Navy, came running up the beach, and I thought, he's running right up here. He came right up to the dozer and climbed up. He said, "A sniper just shot at Douglas MacArthur." He said, "They think it's in that last house that's standing there in Dulag, little town of Dulag, where we landed." He said, "Go knock that house down." I said, "Oh, sure, I love that, you know, with a sniper shooting at me."
You were supposed to go do that with a bulldozer.
Yeah, sure. So I wound the blade up as high as I could get it, you know, and ducked down behind it, and I went in 5th cog, and I went in the house and took the whole house right out ahead of me. I never saw a sniper. I might have run over him. I don't know, the poor guy. But anyway, that's how I got tangled up in that. One time I was 6 feet from Franklin Roosevelt.
Really? Where was it? Where was that at?
We were standing right on the corner of a block, right on the corner of the curb.
Was that overseas too then? Or?
In Hawaii.
In Hawaii, okay.
Roosevelt came over and reviewed us, and he went within 6 feet of my toes with a car. He was riding in. He was on the back seat looking right at me, right in my face.
Well, thank you, Gordon. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
and
thank you.
Glad for what you did. This is Lenny Tvedten for Our Story Out of the Past in the military room of the Pioneer Museum. Until next time.
That was a very interesting story, Lenny.
Yeah, Gordon had some really, really neat experiences and he had a good sense of humor.
Yeah, I heard he was a real character.
Yeah,
it's very
a lot of fun to talk to.
And you know, that interview was done almost 11 years ago. You haven't changed a bit.
I know it.
How do you do it? Clean living?
Being Norwegian.
Very good. Well, Lenny, I want to thank you for co-hosting today. This has been a pleasure. We're going to have you back. In fact, we're going to have you back quite a bit because, you know, you're a great source of information about our community, so we'd be excited to have you back again. So we want to thank you for participating and helping out and presenting these new stories that we wanted to introduce to the folks. Thank you very much.
I loved it, Jeff.
Wasn't that great?
It was wonderful.
I loved it. Lenny always does a nice job.
Yes, he does.
It was nice to see you, Deb.
Nice to see you.
And we would like to thank you, our viewers, for watching. And as we share with you the sponsors that made this show possible, remember, it's not just the past, but the present that tells our story.